This week's guest isn't here to talk fluff. Julie Fox is building high-performance teams by doing what many managers still won't, giving real feedback, asking real questions, and tapping into what actually drives her people. She's flipping customer success on its head, not as a cost center, but as a growth engine. And that means radical candor, coaching that isn't copy and paste, and a culture where even the coasters start sprinting again. Julie's got that rare team number one mindset, and she earns trust across the exec table because she's not just playing for her own function. Let us know you're out there. Hit us up on LinkedIn with your favorite takeaway, and don't forget to subscribe to the Coach2Scale YouTube channel. Let's go.
Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Bonelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coach'em, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started.
I'm really looking forward to my conversation with today's guest, and I'm thrilled to welcome a true bright spot in the customer success arena. She's currently the global director of CS at Sin7, and prior to that, she was a senior customer success manager at Flowcast, where we met. She's been recognized twice as a top 25 creative CS leader and 3 times as a top 100 CS strategist. Pretty cool. Her journey's not been easy, therefore it's even more inspiring. From being laid off during maternity leave to transitioning into tech without any prior experience, she's navigated challenges with resilience and a growth mindset. Makes for a great story and an even better conversation. Julie Fox, welcome to Coach2Scale.
Thank you so much. Super excited to be here.
Awesome, and great to see you. So Julie, we'll hop right in. The Mythbuster question is the first one that I always ask. And let's do it this way. We'll talk about high performance teams if you want, or you can go in any direction with the question. But what's a myth in this business of coaching, leading salespeople, building high performance teams that you believe is either misguided or even complete BS?
Okay, yeah. So the myth that I want to bring up today, and it was actually hard to narrow down when I was thinking through this because I have quite a few that I was like, this really irks me. But the one I want to chat about today is that the myth that sales training is one size fits all. I've lived this personally. I've seen companies that have invested in super generic sales training. They've spent thousands of dollars on training their CS and sales teams, and it's been a total flop because it doesn't resonate with, or I guess apply to their specific product or industry, how technical their product is. So for example, I've worked with companies with very highly technical, highly regulated products. In those industries, the sales cycle can be anywhere from 6 to 12 months or sometimes even longer. With that, you need a sales training that's going to go super, super deep into discovery, research, understanding the customer or their prospects' pains and what their needs are. As a company with a 1 to 2 call close cycle, if you spend 2 calls going really deep into discovery and just asking them questions, and you're not actually showing your product or speaking to the value or any of that, you're going to lose them. And so I think that's something that I've seen a lot is just where people try to apply sales training and just say, okay, let's apply this here without actually thinking through what would that experience be for the prospect or the customer. Are we going to burn them out because we're not actually sharing information and creating unnecessary friction in the deal?
Makes a ton of sense. Nobody wants sales training off the shelf, right? They want it personalized. It doesn't have to be customized, but it needs to be personalized to them in their sales cycles. So true. So when we first chatted, we talked a little bit about the importance of and the challenge of building high performance teams. And you talked about coaching, radical candor, feedback flywheel. Can you unpack how you build the important parts of a high performance team? What are they and how do you incorporate them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned throughout my career is that when you're building a high performance team, a very results driven team, you have to empower them. You have to have them rallying and coming together, Or as a leader, you become the bottleneck. You're the one that is the keeper of the answers, the keeper of approvals, and things like that. And it's not good for anybody. And so for me, part of building out a team starts with getting to know them on a human level. So understanding who my team is, what their strengths are, what they care about, what their short and long term goals are, what motivates them, how they like to receive feedback, kind of all of that stuff. I truly get to know a
Mhm.
team on a human one-to-one level where I'm spending at least an hour with each individual person really early on in my journey with them, whether I grow into a leadership role or whether I come into a leadership role new to the team. I think that's really important to take the time to get to know them. And then from that, I'm also setting the tone around here's how I'm going to show up. Here's what my role is for you. Here's how we're going to work together. A lot of that is really digging deep into conversations around feedback and setting the stage around that. There's a lot of people, when they think of feedback, mind immediately goes to constructive feedback or, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I did something wrong because I'm receiving feedback. And so it takes a little bit of change management when I'm starting new with the team to be able to unpack that and say, hey, this is something that we're going to do. I may need to train them and teach them how to give and receive feedback because at the end of the day, it's not just here's how you're going to receive the feedback that I'm going to give to you as your leader, but also here's how you're going to receive that feedback. Here's how you're going to give me feedback or give your peers feedback. And I think for me, a huge part of trying to build that performance based culture is getting a team to lean into that growth mindset of, hey, we are all in this together. We want to continue to get better. And if I'm giving you feedback, it's not that you're doing something wrong. In fact, you may be doing a really good job. And I either want to let you know and acknowledge, hey, do more of this was phenomenal. Or I may say, hey, this was good. Here's some feedback for how it can be exceptional. And I think that's truly where my job is as a leader is to invest in the team in the way to make sure that they are consistently continually getting that feedback, and I do it in a kind way. I am a big fan. You mentioned radical candor. I'm a huge fan of that, being able to give feedback in a way that shows, hey, I care personally about you, and because of that I'm going to challenge you directly. I'm going to give you clear specific feedback so that you can action on that and you know how you're doing. I see a lot of teams that try to jam all their feedback into performance reviews once a year. And I think it's such a miss. That's something that really you shouldn't, first of all, have any surprises in feedback in an annual review, but also that should be something throughout the year and as in real time as possible to say, hey, I was on this call with you, or hey, I listened to this call, or I noticed this. I want to give them that feedback as soon as I possibly can.
And so, what I hear you talking about, though, Julie, is there's a process
Mhm.
for giving feedback, right? So, there's a philosophy, and then underneath that, there's a process.
Sure.
And it sounds like you're saying it's really helpful to enroll the team, the individual team members, that, hey, this is how I feel about feedback. This is how we're going to approach it in terms of the framework. And this is how we give each other, this is how we give and receive feedback.
Mhm.
And what are some of the mistakes that you see making? One of them you talked about waiting to performance reviews and
Sure.
try to jam things in. What is something else that you see is maybe a missed opportunity when it comes to feedback?
So, not everybody receives feedback in the same way. Aid is going straight into feedback without really checking in with the person of where they're at in that moment for that day. While some people, yes, it should be as soon as for others, sometimes they need to know, hey, I have some feedback for you. Here's kind of the highlights of it. When is a good time for us to go deeper into this? That
Oh,
way,
okay.
then it's not necessarily me saying, I'm going to wait a couple days for this, but I've had people before that I start giving them feedback without checking in and saying, hey, are you in a place that you're ready to receive this feedback? And because of that, it feels a lot more emotional because sometimes people need that time. And I think that's where you start to see people that come off almost as a little bit more defensive, that they're reacting to the feedback in that way, or they're saying it's because of this or whatever, because they haven't had that time to really sit with it. And so I think, again, it's not one size fits all. I, time and time again, need to pre prep them for feedback, and that's okay. It literally takes probably 30 seconds to send a Slack or to say something at the end of a call and say, hey, this was a great conversation. I do have a little bit of feedback for you around these few areas. Would love to go deeper on this. When's a good time for that? Or would you like to go into that right now? And give them the opportunity to say, yeah, I'd love to sit with that. I'd love to prepare for that conversation so that they don't feel off guard. So that's one mistake that I've seen. I'd say the other big one is just around consistency. I see a lot of people that go through trainings. Maybe they listen to this podcast and they feel super inspired. And for the next week or two, they're giving feedback all the time. And then that completely falls off for a while. And I think, especially with leaders, we're pulled in a million directions. I get it. It's super, super easy to get in a place where you're so focused on strategy and results and performance and all of these things, or get really tactical with your team. And so I think trying to find a way that you can carve out time specifically for feedback, specifically for career development and performance conversations. And I've done that a couple different ways. For example, one of my managers, he was sharing with me that he felt like, man, my one-on-ones with my team are becoming super tactical. What do I do about this? I feel I'm not doing enough when it comes to coaching my team. So I had given him some advice of things that he could do. He is spread super thin, so it's not like I can say, just meet more with your team. So we came up with the idea of him starting to have more office hours a couple times a week. And he leads a global team. So that I think works out well to say, hey, these are set times throughout the week where I'm going to be available to answer questions, to get really in the weeds and tactical or technical with things. But when we are in a one-on-one, that time's for you. That is time where I'm going to be giving you feedback or coaching and different things like that. Or also, another thing that we've tried with his team is getting the team to listen to each other's calls and provide coaching and feedback. So again, to that point, it's not the responsibility only of the manager, that frontline kind of manager, to be giving everybody feedback. Team to team, there's a lot of really good learning that can happen when you start having the team listen to each other's calls, because either they hear something that's really good and they're like, cool, loved the way that sounded, I'm going to steal that myself. Or they're like, hey, I've got some feedback for you. Here's a way that we can make this better. And either way, I think it's a really good learning. And again, it really empowers the team.
Yeah, we had a guest on not too long ago. Her name was Dr. Rachel Pacheco, and she is a professor of the business school at Georgetown, and she had equipped that feedback is, it's like underwear. Like, you don't really want it, but everybody needs it, even though you don't always want it, to get it as a gift. A lot of folks, Julie, let's say frontline managers, they're promoted into this role. They did a great job as an individual contributor. They got the battlefield promotion. Hey, you did a great job there. Congrats. You're now a manager. Thoughts and prayers. Good luck.
Congrats. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Get the feedback that they should be getting. I'm being nice. Is it okay to ask for feedback from your manager?
Absolutely. I do that constantly. I just had internal QBR with my CEO, COO, CRO. Literally, as soon as I got off the call, it was like, here's what we talked about. Here's the key takeaways and action items. And first of all, am I missing anything, or are we aligned there? But then it was like right away, I would love feedback. And I usually give a little bit more information around that, of not just, hey, open to any feedback, please share with me. But I try to make it a little bit deeper of, hey, in order for me to continue to grow or make sure that I'm aligned to the vision of the business, can you provide me a little bit of feedback for how I can continue to improve, or if there's anything here? And so I think asking for that feedback, whether it's from a formal presentation or something like that in that example, or just with your manager where you're in a one-on-one or something like that, and you're saying, hey, I'm feeling a little bit stuck here. Yeah. What else can I do? Is there anything else? And I think that's where, like, what I've seen is one of two things can happen, especially when it comes to career development and your growth. If you're like, hey, I've been in this role for a period of time, I'm feeling a little bit stuck. Do you have any feedback for me? Because a lot of times feedback can go hand in hand with those career development conversations. Either your manager is going to look at you and say, you're doing a really good job. Here's the things that are going well. Keep up the good work. You're on this path for growth, or you're doing the right things, do more of it. And maybe they have a little bit of feedback for you, but it's mostly because positive feedback is feedback. Letting you know what you're doing well is also can be very helpful. Or they're going to say, hey, here's the things you're doing well. And if you want to continue to grow, here's the things I need to see more of. Here's the stuff that you've got to do. And I think that's where you can have the more general feedback. And then when I think of like a sales or a CS team or my account management teams, That's where the feedback starts to be, there's a time and a place for the more of a feedback around your career development and like those soft skills and stuff. But also you need to mirror that and match that with actual like performance-based coaching of, hey, I listened to this call. Here's the actual stuff and examples that I'm seeing, or let's role play this, let's practice. And I think that's something that just not enough teams really dedicate the time to practicing these skills. I've been very guilty of this myself, of I'll roll out some new shift for the team of, hey, we're going to do this type of a call. Or one example I can give is like a company where we started doing a big push towards executive business reviews. So both internally, we were bringing in our executives onto calls and like more of an executive
Yep.
sponsorship program with our customers, where CEO joins a call with a customer, and we're inviting the customer to say, hey, our CEO is coming. Can we invite your CEO to come or whatnot? And we roll this out and we get excited because we're booking all of these meetings. But you know what we didn't do? We didn't coach the team on how that looks different from a typical business review. Because when you have an executive on a call, whether it's yours or the customers, they care about very different things than what your kind of core champion might in the business. And so I think that's where what should happen is you prepare for things, you prepare for those kind of change management pieces ahead of time and give the coaching the practice before they're in the game. And then you also give it afterwards to say, hey, here's what went well. Here's some things that we learned along the way, so that each time they get on one of these types of calls, they keep improving, they keep getting better and learning and evolving. And ideally, you're doing that not just with that one person, but you're also sharing it in a way that the team can learn together so that they can actually say, wow, Joe made this mistake. Now I don't have to make it because I learned from his mistake. Or John did an awesome job on this and I can now borrow that from him instead of me having. You should be working as a team and doing that coaching and stuff in a way that feedback can be one to one, but let that some of that coaching both before the call and after the call
Yep.
be something that's a little bit more team based that you can learn together.
Yeah, no, and I love that concept. I grew up in this business where there's three parts to the call. There's the pre-call, the call itself, and then there's the debrief. And all three of those legs of the stool make up the call or the meeting, whatever it might be. You talked a little bit about really enrolling your team into what feedback looks like. And one of the things I see a lot with people that I coach or mentor, or whatever it might be, is they'll be excited. Think of this, let's call it a new manager, and he or she's excited because they got put on some project and they got asked to prepare and deliver something.
Mm-hmm.
And they put all this work into it and they're excited and they're nervous and they go into it and they deliver. And how did it go? They said, I did a great job. Okay, what else? Oh, nothing. And by the way, I have two children that are 24 and 25. They're both early in professional. One's in consulting, the other one's in sales. And they say the same thing. How'd you do? Oh, they said I did a great job. So what do you say to that? Let's say you're mentoring or coaching someone that put all this work into something and their manager says, oh yeah, you did a great job.
It's the same feedback that I give when I actually am like, if I'm listening to a call with one of my team members and a customer. Typically, if you don't get enough feedback or enough detail and explanations, a lot of it can be in the positioning of how we're asking for things. If you just say, hey, can you provide me feedback or whatever, and they just say, oh, you did a great job. Typically, that's where then you need to go a little bit deeper, or again, give the reason for why I want the feedback of, hey, in order for me to help me grow. Sometimes that may look like you actually calling out specific things where you're saying, hey, putting this together, I felt a little bit challenged in this area specifically. Can you help me a little bit with that? Like where you're going a little bit more specific instead of just saying, hey, I spent 4 weeks putting together this presentation or project or whatever it may be, and asking for feedback all at once. I would say trying to make the ask a little bit smaller of throwing in on a specific part to say, hey, I felt uncomfortable with this. Could you help me or whatnot? Or by just letting them know, hey, I'm really looking for actionable feedback. This is something that was new to me. And candidly, I was really excited for it. And I feel like I did a pretty good job. And I really appreciate that you said that I did an awesome job. That makes me feel really good. But I do want the opportunity to continue to do things like this. Is there any specific feedback that I can action on so that next time I can be even better?
Yeah. And I love where you're going with it. It's about learning how to assertive and asking for feedback. And if you're not getting feedback, it's not your manager's fault. It's your fault.
It's not always just, it can't just be the responsibility of the leader, because in the example
Right.
where you're saying, hey, this person stepped into a role where they're a first time manager, maybe high performer, transition to a management role. They don't quite get the training or coaching that they need, so they need feedback. There's a good chance that leader that they're working with, that next line, may have also never received coaching and training for how to be a leader. They may not know how to give feedback. They may feel really awkward about it, and they may feel uncomfortable because they feel like this person did a good job. And yes, I have some ideas for ways they could do better, but I don't want to discredit how hard they worked, or I don't want them to feel ashamed that they messed up on a certain area or something. And I think that's where it's like this whole idea around leadership. It's not just the frontline managers that need it. There's
Yeah.
directors, VPs, CEOs, CROs that have never received any type of training and development on how they should be managing their teams and their leaders. And I think that's where, when I think of that, I've had those managers where I've gone to and it's, I'm literally begging you for feedback and they're giving me nothing other than the pats on the back and keep up the good work. And that is nice to hear. I don't mind hearing that every once in a while, but it doesn't help me get better. And so that's something where if I can't get that from my manager, that's not going to stump my growth, because that to me is very short sighted to say, because I didn't have this manager giving me feedback, I couldn't grow. No, there is so much learning that can happen. And so whether you find podcasts, find different courses that you can take, different things like that, and a lot of times I'll even go to a manager and say, hey, I want to take this course, or I want to do this. Here's the budget. Here's whatever. Here's what I believe I will get out of it. And I'll make that case for myself. And it's not that I'm calling them out and saying, hey, I'm not getting this help from you. I still need it. But I think when I can position it in a way to, here's how it's going to impact me and here's how it's going to impact the business, more often than not, you'll get yeses. And so I think
Yeah.
that's where trying to at least let yourself know that feedback is important, but there are truly people out there that just, they haven't developed those skills
Right.
themselves. And if you're in a position where you feel like, hey, Julie's talking to me right now, I have a manager that's not giving me feedback other than the pats on the back, seek that out elsewhere.
Yeah.
Find mentors, find other people, or don't just go to your manager, go to your team as well and say, hey, I've been trying out this new way of doing one on ones or how we're doing team meetings. How's it going? Or you can go to your team and ask for feedback as well.
So this whole concept of I come in, I do my job, I get great job, pat on the back, it could kind of lead to a situation that a lot of folks describe, or I know a lot of has been written about this, where people they're not engaged
Mm-hmm.
and they're coasting. But sometimes some specific feedback showing that you care can take somebody who has a lot to offer, who may have been a top performer in the past, but now is just going through the motions. You can give them a little bit of a wake up call where, oh, wait, my manager's asking me questions. My manager cares about me. They want to know my opinion. Maybe.
That's the misconception, is that a lot of people, a lot of leaders out there think that because I'm friends with this person or I don't want to create unnecessary friction or whatever, I'll just keep giving them the high fives. I have found so many people throughout my career that when I give them feedback and say, hey, here's some ways we can get better, and I actually like work with them side by side, they get so engaged. Like it completely reinvigorates them. And I've had people, I had somebody at a past company that I came in working with them in the first few months. They were a B plus player, I would say, like somebody
Mhm.
that's consistent. They're good. By no means are they not great, but they also weren't exceptional. And I remember having a really tough conversation with them because there was an award for a rookie of the year type thing, and I didn't nominate them for it. And they asked me why, and they were like, I'm doing a good job. Why aren't you advocating for me here? And I was like, I will advocate. Feel like that is completely my job. But I gave them very specific feedback and I was like, that's fair. Let's have a meeting. We talked through a lot of different things. I gave some ideas. This person went from being like a B plus player that had never really received any coaching or feedback prior to me being there to being one of the most impactful senior CSMs and going on to now working at another company, leading teams and doing some really incredible things. We've stayed in touch and time again. He's like, you woke me up.
Yeah. How do you identify somebody who might be in that position who's coasting? And how do you pull them back in?
So it depends. I've definitely had those experiences where I think somebody is that maybe they're not at their full potential and I think there's something more in them. And sometimes that's not the case. But I would say more often than not, you give people really clear direction for the expectations of the role. And also, here's what exceptional looks like. This is actually something that I've done at past companies where we've had the typical here's how you do your job, here's what good looks like, here's what exceptional looks like, and give those examples. And I think being able to show them this path towards more and then talking to them more individually and saying, hey, of these key areas of ways that you can grow, that you can get more engaged, what excites you? And I think the more that you can talk that and figure out what that one thing is, typically you can find something that gets them excited, whether it's more of the maybe a leadership path, like a people management. Maybe there's somebody that's really, they want to feel more fulfillment and feel like they're having a bigger impact on the team. So you give them opportunities to mentor others on the team. Maybe there's people that are getting really frustrated with certain processes or certain things. So you give them the opportunity to say, hey, let's build that. Let's fix that together. Tell me
Yeah.
more about what you need. And Jane, I think that's where it's just taking things the next step further of really understanding the person and how you can understand not just what motivates them, but also what does growth look like to them? What does fulfillment and purpose look like to them? And that really allows you to then say, okay, how can we go a little bit deeper and really understand what gets you excited?
And it's like you started off by saying training can't be one size fits all, but neither can motivation
That's
and
great.
neither can feedback. I just remember a couple of quick stories where a friend of mine, we were out one day and he's talking about how he had to travel from where we lived in Connecticut into New York City for some motivational like team like dinner, like it was like an appreciation for the team. And he was like put off by it. And he's a very different personality style than me. I'm like, what's wrong with that? Sounds like a great night. And he was just an introvert who wanted to be home.
Yeah.
And he was a solutions engineer type. And so his point that I think the takeaway for me was everybody's motivated
Yeah.
differently. And if you really want to do something right, and he said this, if you want to do something right for me, give me like the afternoon off this was before COVID, give me the ability to work from home so I don't have to take a train both ways.
I think can evolve throughout your career. I look at certain parts of my career where I was very motivated by I wanted public praise. I wanted the more public, the better. And I cared a lot more about financial gain, title, things like that. Not to say I don't care about those, I still appreciate those. But for me, I resonate with that. I am a mom of two young kids, and flexibility really matters to me. Being able to have a base of trust and autonomy with the teams that I'm a part of, that is something that makes me feel really good because I don't do well in a Jane type situation. But I think there's other people that really thrive in that structure. They want to know exactly how to do their job. And so I think that's where, to your point, you've got to get to know the team. You've got to understand what motivates them, but also how they like to receive praise. What is meaningful to them? Will they be driven? I've had teams that we've rolled out certain spiffs and they're like, they don't care. They're not money motivated people. And I see that a lot on the CS side where they are more fulfilled and motivated by purpose and team and different things like that. They'd rather have stuff be tied to the team and being able to help each other and work together versus them as individuals having that leaderboard. And that's something that I had to figure out because coming from a little bit more of the sales and marketing side of things and coming into CS, I was bringing in all of these different sales tactics and saying, oh, we'll do this spiff, we'll have this leaderboard, we'll do this. And it actually made people feel really uncomfortable because they were like, I don't want to be the number one person. I feel bad for number 2 and 3 and 4. It just didn't resonate with who they were.
Yeah. You talked about just asking people like what excites you, what's your one thing. A college friend of mine who's an enterprise salesperson, he's very successful. He recently started at a new company and I was, hey, how's it going at your new company? And he said, oh, it's great. And I'm like, what's great? He's at a skip level. And for the first time in 6 or 7 years, My manager and my manager's manager asked me what my goals were. And I was waiting for him to tell me more. And I'm like, basically, I was like, that's it? And he's, yeah, that's it. They just asked me what my goals were and they cared. I'm like, you're a cheap date.
It
That's
doesn't have to
good.
be.
It's not hard.
We
But no one
all,
does
at
it.
the end of the day, we're all people. And I think that it's like, it can feel dehumanizing or demotivating when we feel like we all are being trying to like fit into this perfect box on a team of here's the playbook, here's exactly how to do your job, and there's no human side to it. I think being able to just show your team that you care can go a long way. And I think, yeah, asking those questions, it doesn't have to be overly complex. It's really just getting to know them and understanding them, and that can go a long way.
People don't care what you know until they know that you care. So, leadership motivation, what's a belief that you have about leadership, about motivating people that others might find controversial or just not?
I don't know about controversial, but one thing that I've been leaning into over the last couple of years has been this whole kind of mentality around team number one leadership. Are you familiar with what that is?
Team member one, it's not about I'm the head of customer success or I'm the head of sales development. That's my function, but the team is the executive team,
Yeah.
and that's
So,
the most important.
yes, if
That's
you
my
look at
understanding.
you're exactly right. When I think of my team, I am the leader of customer success and account management. When I don't think of necessarily those teams reporting underneath me, but I actually think of my teams of leaders, of
Yeah.
VP of sales and partnerships and product support and all of these different cross-functional leaders. And it's really this alignment towards really understanding the business and the business prioritizing what does the business care about, and then how can my teams that report to me and my functions, how can we contribute to those? And so that's been something that for me was this major shift in leadership for me and that aha moment. I think the team number one came from Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage
Dysfunctions.
book. What?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was
It
thinking it's
might
the
be in
five
Five
dysfunctions of a
Dysfunctions
team.
too. I'm actually
Yeah.
not sure. I more recently read The Advantage, but this whole concept blew my mind a little bit because as a customer success leader, I had been doing it wrong. I was so focused and obsessed with my team, our metrics, all of these different things. And I would go into these presentations with my leadership and I would be presenting to them about satisfaction scores and these different things. And it's like their eyes are glazing over and all of that because I wasn't speaking the language of the business. And time again, when I was making asks for headcount, resources, budget, whatever, it was getting denied. And just by shifting in how I was spending my time, how I was positioning things, all of a sudden I started having the CEO or whoever is leaning across the table and saying, how can we help? What do you need to do to get these things done? Because I was coming in as more of a team player to say, hey, here's how CS can show up. Here's the things that we can do to help the business meet these goals. And they were like, cool, how do we do that? And then all of a sudden, when I'm saying, I need this headcount, I need these resources, these different things, are like, sounds good, let's put it together. And so that to me has just really shifted, especially because I think, and I live under revenue right now, so I report directly to Chief Revenue Officer. That makes it a little bit easier for sales and CS to align. But I've had a lot of experiences throughout my career where it felt like sales and CS were butting heads. Like we are constantly sales sold this customer that was a bad fit, and now we're dealing with this, and then we're pushing stuff back to sales, and it's going back and forth, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel like a partnership. And I think by investing in those relationships cross functionally, it's completely shifted. Not just, yeah, I get a lot more fulfillment out of my job and I enjoy it because I really have learned a ton from these different key leaders that have very different strengths and skill sets, but also it has impacted my teams, my functions, and our customers in such a beautiful way because I'm actually making the movement that I needed to. And
An example?
so we actually just rolled out something at my company a couple months ago or over the last few months around customer centricity. So this is something where CS owns churn. We own the number, but anybody, I would think, I hope most people understand that when it comes to customer success and customer experience, it's not one team, it's not one person, one function. people choose to renew or choose to grow or churn or whatever, those decisions are made on layering of experiences that they have with marketing, sales, support, customer success, all of these different things. And a lot of companies treat churn like it is a customer success problem. And it's okay, these customers are churning. We need more meetings. We need to do this and all of these different things. But they're trying to put band aids over broken bones, is the way that I think of it. So instead of actually fixing the product or fixing some of these misalignments or different things, they're just saying, go talk to a customer and that'll solve it. And big surprise, it doesn't solve it. And what happens is you start to have customer success teams that are on the verge of burnout because they're super, super reactive. They spend all of their time, they're essentially ambulance chasers. They're literally just chasing the next fire and the next thing. And it's not really getting the results for the business. And so my company, my leadership is very aware of that. And so when I came in and started to see, hey, I'm seeing some things that aren't really getting us the results that we need, that was something that my CEO immediately was like, all right, let's talk through what does this look like as a business? And so we rolled out, I came up with this more kind of customer centric theme. He was really adamant. He didn't want this to become like a poster on the wall because he was like, every CEO says that they want to be customer centric or customer or whatever.
The opposite of that is I don't want to be customer centric.
Yeah. So he was like, he rolled out this whole thing company wide, spearheaded this called Own the Outcome. Every team, every touch point, I think is the slogan of it. And then I started meeting with each individual department head to say, hey, let's talk about how finance, let's talk about how people and culture or partnerships or sales or whoever, let's talk about what customer centricity looks like and how your department and how we can work together on these things. And so it's been really cool because there's some people that have came to me and they were like, I've got lots of ideas. Here's what we're already doing. There were a lot of people that candidly were like, I'm not really sure how engineering supports this or people and cultures. And those aren't real examples, of course, but there were specific departments. And so I feel like it gave me an opportunity to collaborate, to kind of educate them and share some of these different things. And so that's been a really cool example of something that if I was just trying to solve customer centricity in my own department, there's only so much I could do. It's only a portion of it. And I think being able to broaden that to the whole company has really been cool because not only have we had better kind of sharing around the successes and stories of our customers, but it's allowed there to be a little bit more, I guess, purpose driven approach to like the company of the work that we're doing, regardless of what team you sit on. It impacts our customers and it impacts the results of our business and the results of our customers' businesses.
And also, what I love about what you're saying is it reframes what you're doing. Let's face it, unfortunately, a lot of times CS is viewed as a reactionary organization. And so, how do you get the mind share of your CRO, your marketing counterparts, et cetera? And I think you talked about in the past, you wouldn't be speaking the language.
Yeah.
But this whole notion of customer centricity and how you framed it was really a reframe to say, hey, I'm part of team number one. And that's different than Julie just advocating to get every scrap of budget and attention for her organization.
Yeah, and it's more of a partnership. It's not me giving them marching orders necessarily. It's more of, hey, how are we as leaders going to come together to move the needle and direction of the business in the right way? And so I think it really becomes more of that partnership. And sometimes what that means is that I have priorities for my team and departments that actually are deprioritized because it's like, hey, as a business, we're focusing on these couple things. And so it's these areas we need to push further on. And I think it's that understanding, but also the ability to go back to my team and explain and understand these things that I don't feel like before, when I wasn't operating in that way at past companies, it felt like I would roll things out to my team and they would ask me questions on, hey, why are we doing this? This doesn't feel like it makes sense or whatever. And I kind of looked dumb because this is what we're doing. And I didn't have enough background to be able to say, here's why we're doing it. Here's why this is important and why this matters. And I think that's where being able to go a little bit deeper helps my team to better understand how the work that we do actually ladders up and matters.
Awesome stuff. So, Julie, you're at Sin7 now. For those who don't know, can you talk about what the company does
Yeah. Yeah.
and what you love about what you're most excited about these days?
Absolutely. So Sin7, connected inventory performance solution. We work with over 8,500 customers, and we automatically provide a real-time picture of everything that they make and sell. So our mission is really to make product selling as easy as product buying, and we help our customers to do that. One thing that I love is our customers. We work with some really cool brands that are doing cool things. So I feel like that's just fun. I enjoy that aspect of it. But really excites me about this role and company and what brought me here was the opportunity to build. I've worked with scale ups and unicorns and whatnot. Regardless of the size and stage, we are at a very mature stage, but at the same time, we are still continuing to evolve and grow. And specifically, when I came in, I was able to build out a account management team. Historically, most of our growth from the upsell side had always been more organic, customers raising their hand and saying, "Hey, I need more users or this connection or whatever."
Yeah.
And we've now built out a team in the last year of account managers to really help guide the customers to growth and to be able to help them to say, "Hey, because we know and understand your business, we've really become this kind of recommendation engine." And
Mm.
that's really cool. I love things that are important to me, being able to build, being able to, I'm a very strategic leader, but I also get really stir crazy if I don't feel like we're executing. It drives me insane if I feel like I'm just having meeting after meeting talking about what we're going to do versus actually doing it. The other thing that's, I think, just being able to be a part of a team that allows for such kind of autonomy, empowerment, ownership. It's been an absolute dream.
That's really cool. It's clear that you care about what you're doing. You care about the mission of the company and you care about the people that work on your team. Those are the types of guests that I try to bring on to Coach2Scale here. Usually people who care about coaching, leadership, developing people, the stuff we're talking about, had that behavior modeled for them somewhere along the way. Who's somebody in your life whose coaching, mentorship has had a profound impact on who you are and how you approach things today?
So one, and this one will get maybe a little bit mushy, but one would be actually my dad. I grew
Sure.
up in a family. I'm the youngest of three girls, and we all have very strong personalities and opinions. And we grew up literally raising our hands at the dinner table for our chance to talk. And my dad would bring in, he had been a CFO and a COO. And so he would bring in a lot of his work into kind of those dinner table type conversations. And so being able to have the opportunity at a young age to ask questions and learn. And he gave us a lot of feedback. I feel like that now that I'm a parent, I see a lot of correlations in parenting and in leadership. And I also
Hmm.
felt that growing up. Grew up in an environment where I was given feedback. I was given room and space to figure out who I was. So I'd say that's one. But to be honest, when I got into the work world, I didn't have those examples early on. I feel like I learned a lot of what I didn't want to do when I became a leader.
Common theme. Yeah.
And it wasn't until I shifted into tech that I started to learn how to be a leader. Really, I think I had been a director and a VP before, but I feel like I was kind of just winging it. And then when I made the switch to tech, and this isn't necessarily a person, but I'll shout out this company. The first company that I worked for in tech was Greenlight Guru, based in Indianapolis. They are one of the most development focused companies I've ever worked for or experienced, even in my network of people and talking. They had mindset coaching where we worked directly with a mindset coach. One of the coolest experiences I've ever had and really leaned heavily into that. We also had coaches on giving and receiving feedback and trainings on that. While I was there, I did specific training courses. I was a pavilion member, so I did some different things as well as, and they invest in that on our behalf, as well as Disney Leadership Excellence and some of those different ones. But I just had never had somebody that looked at my career growth as a leader and said, "What do you need, Julie?" Not just what does your team need
Right.
and what's the coaching and training and everything. But I feel like that was the first time in my career where I started being able to invest in myself, both through my company. And I think that really opened up a whole new world to me. And really, that timing was when I started getting engaged and on LinkedIn and in the community and things like that, because I realized that there's so much learning to be had and a lot of it's free. So I think that really allowed me to invest in myself and grow as a leader.
And you said a lot of cool stuff there, and that's great. That shout out at Greenlight Guru as an organization that you're not there anymore, but you look back on them and you talk positively about them, and they've invested in their people. And you talked about a mindset coach, right? So I love that. What's one thing, curious, what's one thing that you recall learning about or being introduced to from a mindset coach?
A lot of it was just the different mentalities around like a growth mindset versus having a scarcity mindset. So it's like the
Mhm.
way that you shift and view things. One of the things that they taught was like you could trick your mind into how you approach things. So it's if you're going into a difficult call, literally saying out loud, like prepping for it in a way, not just where you're prepping for the call, but you're also amping yourself up to say, I'm going to crush this. This is going to go well. And it's like you're literally building out those intentions. Speaking of intentions, one of my favorite things was every quarter as a CS org, we would come up with the mindset coach would lead us through like a visualization and intention exercise where we would talk about the next quarter as if it had already ended. To say, hey, I'm in Q2 right now. Let's look at Q3 or whatever. Let's look at this date and say, hey, by this date, what are the things that we're going to accomplish? And it was very business focused of here's the metrics, here's the projects, but we would also take it that step further of how will we feel as a team? What's the impact that we're going to make? How will our customers and all of these different things? And so it's like you live in that space in your head or together on this call to really visualize and take that. And I think that's where like I've brought some of that with me of I'm a big believer in coming up with those different like quarterly themes and stuff like that, but not just saying here's our theme and here's the stuff we're going to do, but also here's how it's going to impact the business. Here's how it's going to impact you personally. Here's how we're going to
Yeah.
celebrate. And a lot of times we would have these really cool visualizations where we'd say, hey, at the end, here's how we're going to celebrate. And then we would actually do it. It felt really cool and affirming to be able to gather
Yeah.
around 3 months later and be like, wow, we did it. Or we did this even better than we would have expected.
Yeah, great stories. Work with mindset coaches over the years and have really focused on that as part of building our practice too. And the one little thing I recall, one of the first things I learned from a mindset coach was early on where you felt like you weren't getting paid exactly what the value that you brought to the table and things like that. And she said, hey, just look at it like you're not getting underpaid. You're being paid to learn. I was like, huh, being paid to learn. That feels a lot better. I'm getting paid to learn. I just paid a lot of money to learn at school, and now I'm getting paid to learn. That actually
Yeah.
feels good. That's phenomenal stuff. Julie, we covered a lot of ground. We're talking about mindset coaches. I love how you talked about looking at band-aids over broken bones and really using that team one concept where it's not just about me and my team and my org. How do we speak the language of senior leadership and our constituents? We talked about building high performance teams, how one size doesn't fit all. I really appreciate everything you brought to today's discussion.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
With that, I always try to give the guest the last word. Is there anything you'd like to say in parting before we end the conversation?
No, not necessarily. You can find me on LinkedIn. I do share my stories, my lessons learned, and mistakes. So if you want to continue to learn from me, engage with me in LinkedIn. That's also where, and I do mean that, not just don't just follow me, engage with me. I've had a lot of people and friendships that have come together over the last many years from people that have reached out, and we've started to have mentoring sessions or coffee chats and different things like that. So don't be afraid to reach out to me. The other thing that I'll plug is I wrote a book with a group of other really incredible women in customer success that comes out this summer on building and growing customer success teams with people at the center. My
Mm,
portion of the book is really focused more on community branding and network and how that can help you to both as like a hiring manager or as a candidate that's trying to get hired. But the book is just has so much incredible content. We'll be posting more about that as it comes out and as it's released. But yeah, just wanted to let everybody know about that.
awesome. Yeah. And let us know when it's ready to roll. We'll make sure it gets some publicity here and do our little part in getting the word out
Appreciate
on
that. Thank
topics that
you.
are super important. Absolutely. All right. Thank you again, Julie. And for everybody out there watching and listening, thanks for doing that. We appreciate you. As Julie said, let us know you're out there. Don't just hit the like button, engage. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you'd like to see more of. Give us some feedback, specific, timely. And it can be questions, whatever you want to do, but just engage if it's something that you feel strongly about. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is have interesting conversations with interesting people and help make that job, that hard job that you have, just a little bit easier. Good luck out there, and until next time, coach them if you want to keep them.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, How Modern Leaders Build Coaching Cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit and follow us on Twitter at CoachEmNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.